Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. Coalition and announcement of results of the Nigerian Presidential and National Assembly elections will be continuing today by the Independent National Electoral Commission. Questions are being asked as to whether the election management body has adequately executed its mandate regarding the elections. The political parties themselves and the security agencies are also up for scrutiny. We are now being joined by Clement Nwankwo and Ezenwa Nwagwu, both election observers, to look at the elections. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, now that the results are actually coming in Abuja, we are expecting more today. If there's anything that we've actually seen from several parties in this election, is that a lot of them have been actually antagonizing the INEC, that there are a lot of discrepancies in the elections, a lot of them actually rejecting some of these elections. Shehu Sani, the ones from Bayelsa State, and some others have actually been rejected. What is your own assessment of how the coalition has actually taken place?
Well, I think that there are concerns about the entire process. Of course, the procedure is a procedure we're familiar with. The returning officers from the states bring in the results to the Central Collation Center, and they are put forward. But looking at what is going on, there have been cases where questions are arising, and I think that before you have a final return on an election, if there are issues that need to be tackled, they should be addressed before those final results are entered and announced. A situation where you have 170,000 results
products and services to our customers. You first. First Bank.
In a fast-paced world, you need the ability to make everything move at your own speed. Stay ahead. and not miss anything.
That's why I'm a More Life Complete.
Which lets me call everyone in Nigeria on all networks at just 15 kobo per second.
You can also call any line in the United States,
Canada, UK, Germany, India, China, and Malaysia too at just 15 kobo per second. And just when you think life can't get any easier,
I get 15 free minutes to call anyone in the 9 Mobile family.
Just booked your ticket to London.
Before you think I've got a complete or More Life,
I also get 15 minutes free browsing to catch up on sports updates and anything online. Now that's what I call the complete package.
Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. Still in our Abuja studios are Clement, Nwankwo and Ezenwa Nwagwu, election observers, to help us assess the collation of results happening in Abuja. All right, between yesterday and it will still continue later on today. I've been asking, so far so good, how has the collation been faring and what's your assessment on the collation so far? Morning, can you hear me? Mr. Nwankwo, Clement, and Mr. Ezenwa, we're still trying to get your assessment concerning the collation of results that have been coming in for the states we have actually seen.
I'm not quite sure what the question is because I think there's a sound constraint here. But in terms, I'm not able to comment on actual results. I am actually more concerned about the process. And I think that in a situation where you are having questions about some of the results coming in, I think it's important that the Electoral Commission listens before accepting those results. If there are genuine complaints that need to be tackled, this should be done, because we know that if results are taken in where there are genuine issues as to whether the authenticity is correct or not, the ultimate situation, of course, is that candidates or parties can only then have the judicial process as a recourse. While we think that this is important to follow and that all parties need to be restrained at this time and follow through with the process, we also think that the Electoral Commission should be quite honest in determining whether the results coming in from the states are genuine or not, and respond to issues raised by parties before results are finally accepted.
Let me come to you, Mr. Ezenwa, because you are from Yaga, Africa, and you've been monitoring these elections. But yesterday you released a statement saying that Yaga will fact-check the results. Tell us about this process of your fact-checking and how long it's going to take, because the picture painted by Yaga was that you were on ground monitoring the elections in the geopolitical zones of the country, and so you should also have simultaneous results. But when you say you are going to fact-check, it seems like you're just about to start the process.
We are not really getting, there is a break in terms of understanding the questions that are being asked. But suffice it to say that, like the convener of Situation Room has said, we are process watchers. If the process is good, we will not be too concerned about outcomes. And we are saying that if there are concerns that are being raised by candidates or their parties, that it's incumbent on the electoral management body to interrogate those issues, ensure that they are resolved in a transparent manner, and then go ahead to make those returns. Otherwise, the situation will be to force candidates to the judicial process. And the point has been made that as nice as that is, we will not continue to condone acts of clear negligence or dereliction of duty on the part of those who should do the right thing, but must ensure that after we have done due diligence, then we can make that call to citizens and supporters of parties to follow judicial process.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me clearly now when I speak?
Much better.
Okay, great. Mr. Nwankwo, you also released a statement yesterday to the media in Nigeria. You talked about you talked about serious lapses in the conduct of INEC staff and security agencies. Can you tell us more about this report?
Serious lapses actually started from the opening of polls. We did see delay. In some cases, we had reports of polling starting as late as 5 p.m. And once you get into the night, you have no control over the forces of darkness that have no intention of allowing the electoral process to flow smoothly. We did see a lot of that. We did see a lot of materials being delivered late and polling going late into the night. We're still examining also the question whether there was deliberate suppression of votes across the country, perhaps in areas that might be much more supportive of one party against the other. And I think it's something that requires an inquiry to find out why were polling materials delivered late in some parts of the country and not in others. Secondly, why were voting materials short delivered in some parts and not in others? Why were results cancelled or polling results cancelled more in some parts than in others? Lagos State, for instance, is a major issue. Why were polls or voting materials not delivered? Why were there, in fact, polls not holding in some areas? In Kano State, reports were received of polling not happening in Sabongari. This is a question where there are attempts to suppress votes from some parts and as against the other. These are issues of the lapses that we did observe. Then the role of security in some parts of the country, and my colleague here, Ezenwa, mentioned Imo State, which is still a scandal, and I hope it's something that INEC is looking at very, very closely, where there are reports that one particular candidate seized and held election officials until they were forced to announce the result of his choice. And we could hear the electoral officer saying, this is the returning officer saying, I am giving this return under duress. If that is the case, then an electoral offense has been committed, violence has been committed, and under INEC rules, that particular result must be cancelled. So these are issues across the country that, like my colleague mentioned, we need to look at before we are putting out and announcing results. You cannot, because a result has been declared in a place under an electoral offense being committed, decide that you must accept it. So these are issues that I think has created lapses with respect to the way that this election has been conducted. And Nigerians are watching the collation process. And I think at the end of the day, a verdict will be called as to how this election has been conducted. And if it's been conducted in a way that is actually a reversal of the gains that we have had with the electoral process, then I think it really calls for serious inquiry by Nigerians and possibly holding people to account for the failure of this.
Okay, let me take you back to the issue of security. Mr. Nwankwo and Mr. Nwagwu, I think I would need to get both your perspective on this. From your observations, reports from your monitors, will you say that the security agencies were partisan in their approach, or what happened was just clear incompetence or dereliction of duties?
Well, I think that it will be sweeping to say that the security agencies were incompetent. I think what will be safe to do will be to identify in specific areas where there were obvious cases of, absence, complete absence, if not dereliction of duty on the part of security. The reports coming from across the country does not indicate that the issue of security lapses is widespread in the sense in which you can make that call and say that they abdicated. But you have seen in clear cases of Lagos where hoodlums, thugs invaded polling units and there was no response from security agents. There are cases of people who have been killed and about 27 or 39 or thereabout as at the last count of citizens who have been killed in election-related violence. And it diminishes us as a people that our security agencies are not able to, even if it's one person that dies in the course of this this process, it still diminishes us. So is a 39 is huge number to worry and to cause even the security agencies to introspect by themselves and say, how could we have allowed this to happen? If we had value for citizens' life, if we are able to, prioritize the security of citizens, we will be bothered about that. So my sense is that I wouldn't be comfortable to say that this is widespread, but I know that in clear cases that are already clear and obvious to everyone, we didn't see security rise up to the challenge of defending and protecting citizens.
All right, I would also throw questions to both of you gentlemen in the studio there in Abuja. Looking at it right now that we're done with the presidential election, we're at the point of collation. So now we can actually look back at the elections. A lot of people, with all we've seen happen, with talks about duress and undue influence playing a role in the announcements of several results, can we say that this particular election that has just been concluded was free, fair, and credible? Or what are your assessments as election observers to this particular election? How would you grade it, and what's your perspective and your assessment of it?
I'll need to go in a minute or two, but I would say that it's a call that we can't make. The process is still running. There are troubling signs, and I think that at the end of the day, it would not require anybody even to make that call. Nigerians will see how this process has been conducted and be able to determine whether it's free or fair. We will at the appropriate time be able to say so, but I must say that at this time there are worrying signs.
All right, what about you?
All right, I think that captures my sentiments. I do not need to repeat what I agree with.
At this time, some people say it's too early to say, but can we say that voter turnout this time was an increase from what we saw in 2015, from what you've gathered so far?
Well, the Watching the Vote observation on voter turnout by Yaga Africa has said that the turnout is between 36% and 40% across the country. And the results that we're seeing corroborates that. In many places where you had close to 1 million plus voters, you are having turnout rates of 400,000, 500,000, and which is really very low in the sense in which that has come. But like every other thing, the election audit will have to wait in terms of making a broad sweeping of understanding how this election has been conducted, because except you have full reports, even the question you were asking about free, fair, credible cannot be answered very clearly. We will have to have a broader view of what has happened across the country, isolate those issues that are not widespread, and then we are able to get back to citizens with a direct call on what we think and in which way we think the election has gone.
Nwagwu, I asked you a question earlier, but it seems we had a communication breakdown. I was asking about the press release from Yaga Africa yesterday, stating that you'll be fact-checking the presidential and National Assembly election results. And I was asking about that process and when it will begin, and if you've started at all.
We put out a statement, and we have said that no candidates will have more than 55% of the votes cast. We have also said that no candidates will be able to win more than 3 zones, geopolitical zones of the country. Like we said, we will help to fact-check the results that are put out by the INEC, but it is only proper and within legal ambit that we wait until INEC makes his final call.
Okay, Mr. Nwankwo, now election took place in Senegal, presidential election a day after Nigeria's election. And we've already seen results, not as turbulent as what we witnessed in our own climb. Would you say that the desperation of Nigerian politicians is contributing to the fact that whatever measure you put in place seem to be undermined?
I don't think so. I think that, first of all, you have the regulatory, if I should use those words, commission, which is INEC, to do its job. Has INEC done its job? The question is in the air. There are serious lapses that we have seen, and I think it's concerning. Two, have all of the other stakeholders done their jobs? The security services, that's a question that is still hanging in the air. Of course, there are instances that we have recorded. As we speak now in Rivers State, there has been a standoff that has involved even the security taking a role in determining what is going on. If you look at the regulations of INEC, the security forces are supposed to act on the instructions of INEC. That's not what is happening. In Imo State, in Okigwe area, as we speak, there is a standoff but in Imo State, I must mention, because that's been one of the most scandalous aspects of this election, the role of the security in Imo, where an INEC office was bombed, where a candidate went into a particular senatorial district and compelled the election official to declare a result in his favor. The security services are in these locations, even conniving. I think these are things that should not be tolerated and should not be allowed. So there are issues. We don't necessarily blame the candidates. If the process is working well, if people offend the law, as has happened in Imo State, an electoral offense being committed, and nobody brings the culprit to account, then we will keep up with these challenges. It's not every environment. If you have a law that you don't enforce, and those who have responsibility for enforcing the laws do not take action, then you would get what you deserve. And it doesn't matter whether it's in Nigeria or in the United States or the United Kingdom. Laws are there to be enforced. If they're not enforced, you would have lawlessness. And unfortunately, it looks like we are descending into lawlessness in this country.
Bring you back to this question, Mr. Nwankwo, talking about desperation of politicians. If INEC has deployed its staff to do the job, and a politician decides to either kidnap an INEC official, and with perhaps the connivance of security agencies, compelling that INEC official to announce a particular result, is that not desperation from the politician? What is INEC going to do? INEC has no army of its own.
But INEC can also reject outcomes from that process. So it's not a helpless situation. If your officials are ambushed, kidnapped, and even assaulted, and then the process that through which that happened, you accept that result is not it will reduce the integrity of the electoral process. So yes, the politicians need to be called out. I think that they also have completely shown that they are irredeemable. The Imo State scenario played out in the last election, where soldiers and security agents also helped to perpetuate this kind of situation that led to a rerun. And so the bigger question would be that collectively, in the election stakeholder pyramid in the country, the security agencies, the political parties, the electoral management body, and the citizens have great role to play in ensuring that the environment is conducive for free, fair, credible, and acceptable elections. If any of these stakeholders derelict in their functions, the consequence is what we witness in some of the places that these things have happened. But we need to also be a little cautious in ensuring that we have understanding of whether it went well in other places and see the percentage of the places where it went well so that we can truly make a more decisive call in going forward. I think that will be it from us here.
All right, gentlemen, we want to say thank you for your time and for actually shedding more light on what is a developing process in this particular 2019 general elections. And we'll still be giving you more as it goes down today when collation actually resumes later on this morning.
Mr. Nwagwu and Mr. Clement, Nwankwo, many thanks for your time indeed. It's now time for a short break on the morning show. When we return, we'll have Oji Akpe join us with a review of the top stories on today's newspapers. Stay with us.